It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. An Israeli military court handed down an 18-month sentence to Israeli soldier Elo Azariah for the murder of Palestinian Fatah al-Sharif. Al-Sharif was laying on the ground at the time of the fatal shooting. Azariah, the soldier, was convicted in early January of manslaughter for shooting Fatah al-Sharif and for inappropriate conduct. We reported his conviction in Real News interview that was published on January 5th. Despite the light punishment, large segments of the Israeli public expressed outrage that over the fact that he was given a punishment at all. Joining me now to discuss this further is Shir Hever. Shir is a Real News correspondent, and he's speaking today with us from Heidelberg, Germany. Thanks for joining us, Shir.
Thank you for having me, Sharmini.
So, Shir, the prosecution was very controversial at the time he was prosecuted, but this sentence seemed to spur more controversy. What's going on?
What's going on is that the case of Elo Azariah exposes the contradictions in the Israeli occupation in a very clear way. According to the UN data, there were 105 Palestinians who were killed by Israeli forces in the year 2016. And Fatah al-Sharif is only one of 105. But the number of people who were actually put on trial for all of these killings is just one. It's just Elo Azariah. And in his case, it's not the fact that this execution of Fatah al-Sharif was very clearly a murder, but it was the fact that he was caught on camera, and it was the fact that he is one of the least protected members of the Israeli military forces because of his own background, because he's a Mizrahi Jew from a relatively lower class of the Israeli society. He's not so well connected. And so that caused a lot of outrage, because why does he have to stand trial when so many Israeli soldiers and officers have killed many more Palestinians and were completely unaccountable for it? So the fact that he was convicted of manslaughter and inappropriate conduct was already scandalous. It was scandalous because it was a very, very light conviction. It had nothing to do with the actual crime that he committed, because he did commit a murder. But on the other hand, it caused mostly within Israel outrage from the right wing, who were saying, how dare you put this brave soldier on trial for doing what the government is saying again and again is absolutely legitimate. We should go out and kill Palestinians on every occasion, especially those Palestinians who are suspected, even on the slightest of suspicions of preparing to carry an attack of any kind. Now, Elo Azariah, being a military medic, he approached this scene. He sees a Palestinian bleeding on the ground, and instead of acting as a medic and rendering assistance, he takes out his gun and shoots the man in his head and kills him. During the trial, Elo Azariah did every possible mistake. He contradicted his own testimony. He had very poor lawyers who mounted a very terrible defense. And that put the Israeli court, the military court, in a very difficult position, in a very tight spot. In fact, you can say this whole trial was pretty much predicted. The outcome was predictable. But it was the military court itself who stood on trial, because they had the public opinion and the Israeli government calling on them to acquit, calling on them not to punish Elo Azariah. And on the other hand, they had every legal reason and every shred of evidence saying they have to convict Elo Azariah of a much more serious crime. Elo Azariah never expressed any remorse for the killing of Fatah al-Sharif. So what they did in the end, the sentencing of 18 months, is a very odd decision. I think it shows that the military court has completely failed to have any kind of meaningful strategy in light of the situation, because what they did is the average. The prosecution said for a conviction in manslaughter and inappropriate conduct, the minimum sentencing should be 3 years. The Israeli government was saying you should acquit him completely and set him free. So they just took the middle. And by doing that, they have lost both the support of the public opinion in Israel, which is now inciting against the judges and the lawyers and so on, and there are mass demonstrations in support of El Or Azaria. And they've also lost all credibility as a court, because they've given a sentence that has nothing to do with the law, nothing to do with the rule of law.
And the other extraordinary thing about this year was that various political members of the government and so on were also getting involved, making statements about what they thought should happen in spite of the court, considering this case.
Absolutely. The former Minister of Defense of Israel, Moshe Ya'alon, he said that El Or Azaria has to stand trial for what he did. What he did was wrong, was not as part of the military hierarchy, and he was not following orders. And he was fired from his position as Minister of Defense and replaced by Avigdor Lieberman, the new Minister of Defense, who supported El Or Azaria from the start. So this trial is not just about this young soldier of the rank of sergeant. This is a major divisive point in Israeli public opinion. The Minister of Education, Naftali Bennett, has now said today that unless El Or Azaria will be immediately pardoned from serving this jail sentence, that would be a security risk to the state of Israel, which is a very odd statement, but it shows that for him, this is a clear message that all Israeli soldiers should feel free to use their guns at will against Palestinians without any fear of repercussions. And even the head of the opposition in Israel, who's supposed to be from the left, although that argument is very questionable, he said El Or Azaria was operating in an impossible situation. He was asked to serve in an impossible situation. If he would then follow up on that statement and say, actually, there is no reason for the Israeli military to control a civilian population in the city of Hebron and in the rest of the West Bank, and expecting Israeli soldiers to act as police officers in an occupied territory will, of course, continue to create stories like we see now with El Or Azaria and the murder of Fatah al-Sharif. If he would have made that statement, that would have been a very welcome statement and a very important statement, but he did not make that statement. He does not explain how we expect the Israeli military to control 4.5 million Palestinians under military occupation without innocent people being killed repeatedly.
All right. I thank you so much for joining us today, Shir, and we'll be following up on the story with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harmony.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.